My name is Sarah Jenkins. I'm 38 years old, and I'm a landscape architect. I spend my days designing beauty and order, creating spaces where people can feel safe and grounded. So, the sight of my own front door, splintered around the deadbolt, hanging slightly ajar, hit me with a sickening irony. The cold draft snaked its way past me, carrying the scent of disturbed wood and something else, a ghost of my father's familiar aftershave. I hadn't even fully stepped inside, but the quiet alarm from my security system had already buzzed in my pocket, front door forced open. My breath caught, not in a gasp of fear, but a slow, hollow dread. It wasn't a random break-in. I knew, deep in my gut, who it was. This wasn't about theft, it was about entitlement, about a line crossed that had been blurring for years. This single act, this violation of my sanctuary, would finally force me to confront a truth I'd spent a lifetime trying to ignore. To understand why my father would do this, you need to understand the farm, and my brother, Mark. Our family farm in upstate New York had been in the Jenkins family for 3 generations. Rolling hills, ancient oak trees, and a creek that ran cold even in August. It wasn't a huge commercial operation, more of a working homestead, but it was the heart of our world. My father, Robert, was a man of the land, strong and quiet, his hands always calloused. My mother, Eleanor, was the gentle counterpoint, always baking, always smoothing things over. And then there was Mark, my younger brother, a year and a half my junior. He was charming, quick with a joke, but always in some kind of trouble. From the time we were children, Mark was the one who needed saving. He'd fail a class, and Mom would tutor him for hours. He'd get into a fender bender, and Dad would pay for the repairs without a word. I, the responsible older sister who got good grades and worked summers at the local nursery, was often overlooked. Not in a malicious way, perhaps, but certainly in a way that taught me early on that my needs were secondary. The unspoken rule was, Sarah can handle it. Mark needs us. This dynamic solidified over the years, becoming the bedrock of our family. I loved the farm, the smell of fresh earth, the rhythmic work of planting and harvesting. I spent countless hours with Dad, learning about crop rotation and soil health. He even helped me build a sturdy wooden porch swing on the back patio, a place where we'd sit after a long day, watching the sunset. I truly believed that one day, the farm would stay in the family, perhaps even be mine to tend. The first real crack in that foundation appeared when Mark was 28. He'd gotten involved in a cryptocurrency venture that promised quick riches, and, predictably, it imploded. He lost everything he had, which wasn't much, but he also owed a substantial amount to some unsavory characters. My parents were frantic. Mark called them in tears, saying his life was ruined. I remember the night they told me their plan. We were sitting around the kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten every meal for 20 years. We're going to sell the farm, Sarah, Dad said, his voice flat, avoiding my eyes. It's the only way to get Mark out of this mess. He needs a fresh start, a place of his own, away from all this. I felt the air leave my lungs. The farm? Dad, no. We can refinance, or I can help. I have savings. I can buy a share, keep it in the family. I pleaded, my voice tight with desperation. I even showed them my financial statements, demonstrating I could make a significant contribution. But they shook their heads. It's too complicated, honey, Mom said, her eyes red-rimmed. Mark needs a clean break, a substantial amount for a down payment on an apartment, and some capital to get back on his feet. He needs this, Sarah. The farm, my childhood, our legacy, was sold quickly, almost secretly, to a developer who planned to build a subdivision. The sale price was lower than market value, a rushed deal. Within months, the ancient oaks were gone, the creek diverted, and the land where I'd learned to walk was being churned by bulldozers. Mark, meanwhile, moved into a brand new, expensive apartment in a trendy part of the city, fully paid for with the farm's proceeds. My parents moved into a small, functional condo, their savings largely depleted. Mark's fresh start looked a lot like his old life, just with a nicer address. His apartment was luxurious, with high ceilings and a view of the river. He hosted parties, bought expensive gadgets, and continued to live beyond his means. My parents, meanwhile, expected me to be thrilled for him. "Isn't it wonderful, Sarah? He's finally settled," Mom would say, beaming. They'd constantly suggest I visit him, help him pick out furniture, or just be a good sister. I started pulling back, making excuses to miss family dinners, feeling a quiet resentment simmer beneath my polite smiles. The thought of stepping into that apartment, knowing it was built on the pulverized remains of my home, made my stomach churn. Dad, always the less verbally expressive, began to show his disapproval in subtle ways. He'd make comments about my solitude and how I was too focused on work when I declined invitations. "Family means being there for each other, Sarah," he'd say, his gaze pointed. What I didn't understand yet was that being there for each other only ever seemed to flow in one direction, towards Mark. As the months passed, Mark's expensive lifestyle started to catch up with him. The condo fees on his apartment were astronomical, and his taste for designer clothes and fancy dinners didn't come cheap. He started subtly asking my parents for help again, for temporary loans that were never repaid. My parents, having used most of their retirement savings for the farm's sale and their new condo, found themselves increasingly strapped. That was when the numbers stopped looking accidental. They began to ask me for money, framing it as helping out with family expenses or a small loan for us. They'd imply that their financial struggles were a direct result of their sacrifice for Mark, a sacrifice I hadn't made. I finally drew a line. "I will not contribute to Mark's lifestyle," I told them, my voice firm but calm, during a strange Sunday brunch. "I will help you if you truly need it, for your own expenses, but not for him." Dad slammed his fork down. "That's cold, Sarah," he said, his face flushed. "After everything we've done for you, for this family. You're selfish." Mom started to cry, whispering about how I was breaking her heart. It was a familiar script, but this time, I didn't back down. A few months later, my parents called, sounding distressed. Their condo needed a new roof, and it was an urgent, expensive repair. Given their financial situation, I agreed to pay for it, but with a condition: would pay the contractor directly. I wanted to see the invoice, verify the work, and ensure the money went where it was intended. They reluctantly agreed. When the invoice arrived, tucked among the itemized costs for shingles and labor, was a line item for additional structural reinforcement at an address that wasn't theirs. It was Mark's apartment building. That detail mattered later. I called them immediately. "What is this additional structural reinforcement at Mark's address?" I asked, my voice tight. There was a long silence. Then, Mom stammered, "Oh, it was just a small favor, honey. Mark's building needed some inspection work done, and it was easier to just add it to our bill. He really needed it." My blood ran cold. They were not just enabling him, they were actively trying to deceive me. "No," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "No more. This is beyond family helps family. This is dishonest. I will not be paying for Mark's apartment through your roof repairs. From now on, I will only contribute to your specific, verifiable needs, and I will require full transparency." Dad's face hardened. He looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, a mix of anger and something akin to betrayal. "You're ungrateful, Sarah," he seethed. "After all we sacrificed for this family, for you." It was then I understood. They didn't see me as an independent adult with my own resources. They saw me as an extension of Mark's support system, a well from which they were entitled to draw, simply because they were my parents. His anger wasn't just disappointment, it was a sense of ownership, a belief that my assets were, by right, theirs to distribute as they saw fit. I realized I needed to protect myself. I installed a state-of-the-art security system in my home, with cameras covering every entry point. I changed my bank accounts, ensuring no one else had any access, however remote. I began keeping a detailed log of every interaction, every request, every expense related to my family. I even downloaded a restraining order packet from the local courthouse website, just to understand the process. It felt extreme, but the incident with the roof and the look in my father's eyes had shaken me to my core. I confided in my closest friend, Maria, who listened patiently and affirmed my right to set boundaries. "They're testing you, Sarah," she said gently. "And they don't like the answer." The night my father broke in, I was working late at my studio. When the security alert buzzed, my initial thought was a false alarm. But then I saw the image on my phone, a blurry figure, undeniably my father, forcing his way through my front door. My heart hammered, but I remained calm. I drove home, parked a block away, and called the police, explaining the situation and my suspicion. They advised me to wait for them. When they arrived, we entered my home cautiously. Nothing was obviously stolen, no drawers ransacked. It wasn't a typical burglary. But as I walked through my living room, something felt off. I went to my dresser, where a small, antique silver locket, a piece of jewelry my grandmother had given me, was usually kept. It was gone. Mark had always admired it, and once, years ago, had tried to borrow it, claiming it would bring him luck. I'd refused. I called my parents' condo. Dad answered, his voice gruff. "Sarah? What's wrong? Why are you calling so late?" he asked, attempting a tone of innocent concern. "Dad," I said, my voice steady, "you broke into my house tonight." There was a long, pregnant silence on the other end. Then, he blustered, "I just needed to talk to you, Sarah. You weren't answering your phone. And I needed to get something for Mark, he's having a hard time. He really needed that locket for a date tonight, it means something to him." My jaw clenched. "You stole Grandma's locket. You broke into my home. This isn't just needing to talk. This is a crime. My security cameras recorded you." His voice rose, indignant. "Don't be so dramatic. It's family. You always make things so difficult. It's just a silly trinket." "It's my home, Dad, and my property," I countered, the police officer standing silently beside me. "I'm calling the police right now to file a report. You have 1 hour to return the locket to my porch and leave. If you don't, I will press charges for breaking and entering and theft." I hung up before he could respond. The officer took my statement, noting the damaged lock and the missing item. He confirmed that the camera footage would be crucial evidence. True to his word, or perhaps fearing the legal consequences, Dad returned the locket. It was sitting on my porch, glinting faintly in the porch light, exactly 45 minutes after my call. A furious, rambling text message followed almost immediately. "You've betrayed your family, Sarah. You're cold and heartless. Mark is devastated. You'll regret this." I didn't respond. I still filed the police report, not necessarily to press charges immediately, but to have the incident officially documented. The police advised me on getting a restraining order, which I did the following week. It was a temporary order, but it meant my father couldn't come within a certain distance of my home or workplace. My parents were, predictably, furious. They cut off all contact, refusing to answer my calls or respond to my texts. Mark sent a series of nasty messages, accusing me of destroying the family and being a selfish witch. Some relatives sided with my parents, whispering about my harshness, but others, those who had seen Mark's patterns over the years, privately expressed their support, a quiet nod of understanding. The practical consequences were minor: a new, stronger door and lock, paid for by my insurance thanks to the clear camera footage. The emotional consequences, however, were profound. I felt a deep, aching sadness, a grief for the family I thought I had, for the idealized version of my parents that had never truly existed. But beneath the sadness, there was also a profound sense of liberation. The illusion of family helps family, which had always been a one-way street, was shattered. My relationship with my parents was irrevocably changed, perhaps over. I finally had my own space, truly my own, free from their expectations and Mark's endless needs. Months later, I was in my backyard, planting a new Japanese maple, its delicate leaves unfurling in the spring breeze. I looked over at the new porch swing I'd commissioned, a sturdy, elegant piece made of cedar, a different design from the one my father had built. It was stronger, more resilient, perfectly suited for the space I had cultivated. I sat on it, feeling the smooth wood beneath my hands, and looked out at the garden I had designed, a space of beauty and order, built entirely on my terms. The silence was different now. It wasn't the heavy, unspoken silence of resentment, but the quiet of peace. It was finally just my swing, in my home, on my terms.